commercial, what's our name again? Budget and Finance Procurement Work Group. It's now in session, I guess. I want to welcome you all for coming. Thank you for making the time, especially after hours. We try to do it during the day. It's just, as you all know, we're supposed to be part-time, so there's just so much going on. But I do appreciate everybody coming. Just to lay the groundwork like I did for the ones that were here yesterday, the purpose of this group is just to look into how we do business in Metro and to see if we can make things better. This is not to find faults or to say somebody did something wrong. That's not the purpose of it. I've been looking into procurement since my first term, and in that conversation we were able to make some changes. And so this is just a continuation of that conversation to be able to see where we are. Like I told everyone, the purpose, one, to look at performance improvement opportunities. What is it that we're doing that we could change that could make all of our lives better? The example that I gave yesterday was that, when you guys, you've done a lot of work, you put this thing together really nicely, and then it come to us and we sent it back. And we're asking questions that you're thinking, what are they? Don't they know that? And so part of this is to make sure that that process goes easy for everyone, to see if there's any roadblock that we need to fix, but also to educate ourselves, right? We want to make sure that we understand the process enough that when it comes to us, doesn't mean we don't, but get all the nuances and whatever it is that we're missing. So that's the purpose of being here. And the way this is taking place is that we talk to finance to start, to get an overlay of how this is supposed to work. And then the other part is that we're talking to departments. The way that we chose our department, we use two criteria. We look at departments that does heavy volume work with Metro, the ones that spend a whole lot of money on procurement. We pick them so that we can have a good sample base. And then we decided to also look at smaller departments that don't spend a whole lot of money, but still work with Metro, because we want to make sure that the system works for everybody, is what we're trying to do. So after getting all your opinion, then we'll go back and talk to finance, and then they will help us put it together, and then we will meet and come back with them. The other thing that I think it's important to note for everyone why this is crucial is that some of the procurement laws that we have in the books are very, very old. They were put together 60 years ago at the beginning of Metro. And in that time, the way we do business and how much business we do have changed tremendously. But we're still following the same thing because it's the law. Can we, as legislators, do something to make that in a way that it works better for you all? So that's why we're here. We had a first set of interviews yesterday. It was amazing. It was good. If you want to watch it in case something jump up at you in the process that you have, that you want to tell us that, yeah, I thought about this after I saw it, and this is what we do or what we should do. I think it will be helpful. And so our first guest tonight, welcome to the hot seat. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So we pick general services because in looking at the key performance indicators, you guys do a ton of business. You're very high in your RFP. You have a lot of contracts that come before us. Your sole source is one of the top one, and then you have a lot of cooperative agreement. So the way that I've been doing this is because there's so many type of procurement. I don't want to ask everybody the same question. I was trying to see if we can change it so we get different perspective from everybody, sure. And that's what we've done. In your case, the area that I wanted to focus on, we talked about cooperative agreement yesterday. But because you do so much of it, and because the one that we looked at yesterday was a one-off, I think it's important for us to look at one that is regular, and to see where your perspective is. I'm also hoping that through this conversation, I want to make sure there's no communication gap between finance and the department, sure. So that your understanding and their understanding is the same, so that we can make this process better. So if you would introduce yourself, sure. And if you have members of your team here, if you would introduce them. And then once you're done, what I want you to lay out for me is, what does that cooperative agreement looks like? And I know because you're general services, you're buying for other departments. So start from when they come to you, who come to you. How do you decide you're going to buy 100 vehicles? Where did that 100 number come from? is what I want to know. And then once you make that decision, what is the process from the beginning to the end? If you can run that for us, we will appreciate it.
All right, so that's a lot. And,
I know. In 10 minutes.
And since I'm in the hot seat, I just let you know I did wear my extra warm pants because I knew it was going to be cold outdoors. So actually, it's warming me up. But my name's Gerald Smith. I'm the new director of General Services, and I've been in Metro for about 11 months now. And a lot of what you're asking for, I'm learning as much as probably as much as you know, because you've been here for quite a while. And but I have an excellent team of folks that have been working side by side with procurement along the way. And my experience and my observations have been that it's a very fluid process and so on. The team that I brought with me today will consist of Velvet, who is our, who served as the interim director for 3 years. So she's probably the right person to be sitting up in this chair. In the hot
you can sit next to me, by the way. Because the other thing also is that actually, Velvet, I would like you here because
sorry about
this is on screen, but those of you they are not. So if you're talking to us, we want to make sure people know who said that.
Sure.
I'm also with some of the people that are really participating in the lead when it comes to procurement, and that would be Stacy Wall, our Fleet Administrative Assistant Director, Ava Elsinger, who's probably our guru when it comes to all things being procurement in the department, and Grace Richard. And basically, I'm going to have Velvet basically outline, and maybe even to some degree, Stacy outline what our role is and what the process is when we're dealing with cooperatives. One of the things that I do understand is that cooperatives are great. Unfortunately, we think that there's room for improvement. There's room for more.
That's what I hear.
In my opinion. But if my opinion doesn't matter, but you'll hear from my team, and I'll let them outline to you what their observations are and what they believe we can do better. I'll stop there.
Okay.
And let you go with the
It was a lot, so I don't want to ramble on and go.
No,
but the first thing that we do is we identify a need to buy something, and 9 times out of 10, or maybe even more than that, we already have a contract for it. That's what we're trying to do, is already have an established contract for something before one of our customers needs it, so that we can act quickly. So we have a lot of contracts in place through their hard work, and then. But if we don't have a contract in place, then we're going to look at the proper way to get a contract in place. And we're going to do an ITB, just a flat bid if we can. We're going to do an RFP if we need to consider more than just that flat cost for the same service. But then we have some other tools at our disposal per the procurement regulations, whether it be a very small purchase under $1,000 or the delegated authority under $25,000. So we have that at us. Rarely, we might have an emergency. We might have had one in the last 2 or 3 years, but we manage a lot of buildings, so sometimes there's an emergency. But that's an example of where this team's done such a good job, and we have contracts in place to even handle emergencies. So we don't have to. It's rare that we would have to use that. So we kind of look at how we're going to do that. But when we're trying to create a source of supply in fleet, I'm going to let Stacy talk about that in a minute, but fleet is a really good example of how a cooperative can be helpful, because we want to have our own contracts, and we do have a lot of our own contracts for fleet, but we never know what specialty item one of our customers is going to need. So we like to have those cooperatives ready to go. I think Dennis used an example yesterday with you about snow plows and how a cooperative just seemed like a really good avenue for snow plows. And remember, cooperatives are competitive, so it's competitive pricing, and generally there's a lot more volume that we can leverage. It is faster, and sometimes that is a factor that we need to consider. Is an agency might need something quickly, and there might be something on a cooperative that's been competitively bid and has good prices because of the volume, and so that's success when we can find that too.
So do you decide you want to do cooperative, or does purchasing decide in terms of processing? How does that work?
We approach them. We approach them with that. If we think that's the right idea, and then they challenge us vigorously if it doesn't meet their criteria. So by the time it gets to you guys, General Services and Purchasing are in agreement that it's good for Metro to proceed that way. Is that fair to say, Zach?
So yesterday we talked about procurement, or the purchasing agent recommending cooperative agreement. In this case, the department can also recommend that they want to do cooperative? I want to make sure we understand that.
We rarely recommend anything to General Services. General Services are they have a robust procurement team who know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing.
And so generally, 9 times out of 10, if there's a cooperative that General Services is using, it's one that they have vetted, that they have brought to us. The way that all cooperatives work is that the departments, we may suggest to a department to use one, but in order to use it, you fill out a cooperative request form, we review it, that's where I produce the memo that's usually tracking with the legislation, and then if we approve it, then our team gets it active, and then they go and issue a PO against it. But in most cases with General Services, they've vetted their cooperative and made the request to us. Occasionally, they may come to us and say, we're trying to find this thing, and we'll help them identify a cooperative, but I would tell you that there's very little I can find that Ava hasn't already found somewhere.
So that's what I was just gonna ask the question. How do you find a cooperative? How do you get out there and do that?
Well, at the time of need, whenever any of our team members, they need a specific service or goods, actually, mainly, because we submit a request to procurement whenever we need certain goods. So I do some research on the website, on Sourcewell, on other municipalities, counties, and then when I find the appropriate cooperative, I go through the terms and conditions, the requirements, the prices, everything. I review everything. So I can submit appropriate cooperative to procurement in order not to get rejected, because I have to make sure terms and condition applies to Metro. I have to make sure prices are matches our needs and we can afford that. I have to make sure that it has been competitively bid and it offers the best service for or the best goods for our team members. And normally the cooperatives, once they get approved, and procurement establish the cooperative in the system, it gets used by all Metro departments, because we are considered in General Services like the main source of indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contracts and cooperatives. So other Metro departments can always utilize our contracts and cooperatives.
So a couple of questions for you.
Yes.
In determining whether the price is okay, because one of the questions that we were talking about yesterday is that, did you look at what is out there and see that the cooperative price is a lot better?
Yes, I compare different contracts and cooperatives over there on the internet. I do a lot of research in order to make sure and decide that this cooperative is the most appropriate one for our department.
Okay, so I have an example here. I went and pick up a couple of cooperative agreement that we had, and for this particular meeting in February, we actually has 3 come through us for General Services that were cooperative agreement. And then what I noticed in the cooperative agreement, and this is where I need help with all of you to help us with that, is that what is attached in our packet is actually the agreements that the entity made when they were doing the request for procurement. Yes, when they did the RFP. Now, in this particular case, this was one with U.S. commodity, and I'll pass it around. The request for proposal was done in 2015, and there was a price agreement in that for that cooperative agreement. We are looking at doing something in 2024. You can flip to the other back, you can see it. That price that was negotiated in 2015, do we still get that, or has that price been updated? Because that is the 2015 agreement. You can, their contract goes from 2015 to 2024.
Oh,
If you
that's
turn the back of it,
Yes.
yes.
I can answer this question because actually the cooperatives, they contain prices for everything. But those prices, they keep updating actually maybe every year because there is a clause for escalation. So I keep following up on the system in order to find out whether the prices have been updated or not. And if it has been updated, I always notify procurement so they can attach the most updated prices in the system. So all metro departments can see the updated pricing. So it's, yeah.
So is it possible that since we're not doing the negotiation, another entity did, and so let's say we got that. So before we get that packet, the price that we're looking at, I'm not looking at the 2015 price that was agreed on. I'm looking at the updated price is what we're looking at. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. I was following up on the updated price, yes.
That's also an advantage of cooperatives is that typically they have a longer period of time to hold their pricing
Yes.
because they have scale that they can
Exactly.
leverage that we do not. So it's not, whereas it would be highly unusual for us to hold any pricing from 2015 at Metro.
Yeah, that's what I was surprised.
It's not unusual for the cooperatives to hold that for longer.
Okay. All right. And the fact that, okay, so that was my thing with the cooperative because I'm looking at it and I'm looking at all the document that I have before me. Doesn't have Metro anywhere. It's the other agreements with the other people that they had. And so I wanted to make sure that, so when I saw 2015, even when I reviewed it that time, I had those questions. And those are the kind of things that we look at and we're thinking, so even though it was agreed to in 2015, now this particular one ends in 2024. Their original RFP requirement ends in November 24. So if we need something longer, how does that work? Is that extended, or would that be another price?
If the contract were, so generally with the cooperatives, they will have they will rebid that service out. It's rare that a cooperative would just stop procuring a good or a service, and they will put that information out there months before it expires, and then the department would come back and make the request to us to use it, and we would have to pass the legislation again because state law requires that you all approve the master agreement, and because that would be a different master agreement, it would have to come back to you again.
Okay. And so, now let Jennifer ask a question here. So if we get into a cooperative agreement, like let's say the one that we have with Omnia that they have is from 2022 to 2027, for example, and we got in here now in Metro, we got into that cooperative agreement in 2024. Does that last us till the 2027? And does that mean that everything that we need to buy that falls within that agreement, does that still come to council? Or is it a one-time master agreement with council?
Under state law, it's a one-time master agreement. You approve the master agreement saying that we can utilize that cooperative. And effectively what you're doing is you're giving us permission to purchase, you're approving that agreement and giving us permission to make purchases against that agreement. And that approval would last until that master agreement expires. In your example, that would be 2027. But that's also how all contracts work. Once contracts are signed, it's whether it's cooperative or whether we let it.
There's one question. Do the cooperatives also include an extension option in some?
If they do, then the way that we set them up in the system is we set them up for whatever the initial termination date is, and then if they extend, a lot of the this is actually more with statewide contracts than cooperatives, but it'll be like a 3-1-1 where it'll be initial term of 3 years with 2 1-year renewals, and we would just go back in and update that systematic agreement if they extended the contract. That would not have to come back because the master agreement itself
Still in place.
It's still in place, okay. So Jennifer, you have any question?
Is there any fee or anything associated with using somebody's cooperative?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And then y'all had said earlier that there's contracts that we can go back and we can use. How long do those contracts normally stay good for?
Well, we have a lot of contracts, hundreds. And if it's something that we know that we're going to need indefinitely, the longest I believe we can go is 5 years. And we have quite a few 5-year contracts, or maybe like Zach said, 3 and 1 and 1. If it's something, but if it's a project that's going to wrap up in 2 years, then we don't need a 5-year contract. So we make those decisions
Based on what it is.
Based on what it is, yeah.
Anything beyond 5 years would come to you.
You have to come to us.
Right,
yes,
right.
Yes. That much we know. So I wanted to, other than cooperative agreement, which is what we've talked about, there are two questions that we need to ask you really quickly. We want in your opinion, based on everything that you work with Metro purchasing and with the council, all of us, are there things that you all have run into that you think we could do better with the other procurement types that you have, that you all have thought about and said, look, I've been doing this for a long time, and why are we not doing this differently? Or, why am I having to sit on a computer forever searching for something? What are some of the things that you all, based on what you do, that you would like to recommend that we do differently or do better?
I'm going to let Velvet, because she's been here there are a number of things that we've identified that she's shared with me that we'd like to see going forward and so on. You want to share some of those?
Share all of them.
All of them.
Or send it to us.
Out of respect for
Or
your
send
time.
it to us.
So we did get our team who's involved in procurement together to talk about that, and I think the overwhelming message is we really would like for things to go faster.
And why are they not going faster?
I think that was going to be your next question, is where's the bottleneck, correct? And I've thought about that too, and it really just depends. Sometimes the suppliers, the hold up. Sometimes the supplier's legal team's the hold up. Sometimes ours is. Sometimes purchasing is overwhelmed and doesn't have a buyer available to start the procurement. So it's just a variety. Sometimes there's a protest, which is allowed by regulation, and that slows it down. So there's all kinds of things. I don't think one thing came to the top, but I do think that based on the workload, if we could address that, I think things would speed up the process. But also, if we could streamline anything. You've had some really good questions about it. It gets on your desk, and there's a part that doesn't make sense. And if there's a form that we can provide, information we can provide on the front end so that it makes sense to you, I think it would save you time and us time, and we're happy. It's more than likely it's something we've already discussed and considered. We just haven't told you. So anything that we could streamline would be helpful too. And we do appreciate the flexibility to use cooperatives and would like to keep that and increase that as possible. Another thing that we've worked with Dennis and others in procurement on is incorporating environmental sustainability criteria into contract terms and conditions to help us meet our sustainability commitments.
Goals and mandates.
Yeah, and it can be something as simple as when we're securing a contract to buy, cups for Metro buildings, that there be eco-friendly option, not just styrofoam because it's cheaper. So it can be simple like that, or it can be complicated like a construction project that requires that the debris be disposed of in a recycled way. And there's a lot of stuff in between, but they've been very receptive to allowing us to work on identifying those areas where we can have in the contract terms requirements towards sustainability. So that's another thing we talked about. Some things that work well and we want to continue are our regular meetings with these folks, because that's where we have discussions about, let's move this thing up to the top priority, or we've hit a snag in this, we don't quite know where, we've looked at the procurement regulations, we don't quite know what to do. What's your advice? We need to solve this problem together. So that's been really helpful. And multi-vendor awards when it's appropriate, when one vendor can't really meet all the needs, and we need to do multiple vendor awards, that's really helpful too. So cooperatives, multi-vendor awards, the use of statewide contracts, all all those flexible ways to get our customers what they need is very helpful. That's pretty much what we discussed as a team.
All right.
General services.
Well, we appreciate that. Now, because you also have a lot of contracts that you do, so in that process, part of what you will recommend is that faster processing as well. Because what we found out with contract yesterday, especially if it's any type of contract, sometimes we don't get it early enough, and then we come to council floor, and it's like you have to approve it now because it's going to end tomorrow. And so, do you guys run into any of that, or yourself?
I think we do a really good job in general services of getting the requisition to the procurement team early. And it's our job to make sure we get you really good information early. Sometimes it doesn't move as fast as we want to because, again, there's a holdup with staffing. But I think because we start, it's rare that we're down to the wire, that a contract has died and we don't have a way to get the service or good. That is really, really rare.
Generally, something has gone wrong, and
Something-
we're trying to cover it. I mean, because contracts are negotiations. Like there are, it's not just us. It's the department. It's legal. It's the vendor.
Exactly.
It's budgets. And so typically, if it's a situation, I would tell you to be wary of anybody who comes to you and tells you that you have to have this thing today, just because that is my modus operandi. I'm wary of anybody who tells me.
Have you watched our meetings?
We don't. I mean, I try not to be honest. I try not to, but I serve my time there. But I mean, in that situation, it's where generally where something has gone wrong and not gone wrong, where negotiations are going on for a protracted period of time, and we're trying to fill a gap in service. It's certainly not generally the case, and it's certainly not generally the case with general services. I'll say that.
We do have those, and that's one of the reasons why we're having this conversation to identify what they are and what we can do better. Before your time runs out,
I got one question too.
I'll let you ask your question.
Does anybody track the expiration dates on the contracts?
Oh, yes.
We
They
do.
do?
Yes, absolutely. And
Yes,
yes, and we have flags to start the new procurement.
well in advance.
Well,
A year.
probably 2 years. Yes,
That's
a year in
good. That's
advance.
good.
12 months out, we start sending notices to departments that this is expiring, and then they get notices at 12, 9, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Awesome.
Yep.
So, because you have a lot of contracts and you do a lot of regular things that you buy all the time, do you, when the 5 years is over, do you rebid it, or are you just comfortable with the group and you just stay with them? How does that work?
No,
Okay.
we don't want to do that. We want to rebid it, and they wouldn't let us if we wanted to.
Good.
Now, sometimes the same vendor will
win.
win, and sometimes they won't. But just because we've had a contract with a company for 10 years, it means that they've competitively bid and won that procurement. Yeah.
Okay. And my last question to you is, because you are general services and because you're buying stuff for a lot of people, one of the questions that always come to my mind when I see we need 100 vehicles and we need this everything and we need every that is that, how do you track inventory, and what about surpluses? Because every year we buy a lot of new vehicles, and I'm always thinking, what happened to the one we bought last year? We just bought two.
Yeah.
Is somebody? I would like to know how that works.
I'd love to talk about surplus. So
I mean, do people look in, and I want you to answer the question together for the sake of time. So when we're doing capital, the 4% thing every time, there's a questionnaire that people fill out. And the part that always gets me is that, do people check whether we have it already before they get a new one? And that question is never answered, as well as, did you check with purchasing before? Always gets me every time. So that's why I'm asking that. You buy a whole lot of stuff. We have a lot of stuff in Metro. Each department is buying things. Does somebody even check before they put forward?
we definitely do on vehicles, and I'm happy to let Stacey talk about that. But
Please.
we have a replacement criteria for vehicles based on age and/or mileage, and everything that we buy has met that criteria or has been approved as an addition, generally because there's additional program that has new staff in a department. So it's met that replacement criteria or it's an addition. If it meets replacement criteria, then those vehicles are auctioned through eBid, our online auction process, to the highest online bidder.
Do you do trade-ins?
We do not do trade-ins.
But we are behind on the system of updating a lot of our vehicles right now, correct?
We are, but this,
Very behind.
the CSP is gonna help us quite a bit.
Yeah.
And 4%, we'll still be behind on 4%,
Yeah.
quite a bit. But you guys have been gracious to us. We've done really well on where the fleet's come a long ways.
Is bidding and selling them off on auction better than trading them in terms of what we get from it?
It is because of the nature of what we do with them. They're so specialized, and sometimes, well, here recently, we've kept them so long that the residual value is just not there.
Yes, that's the problem.
It's just not there, to be honest with you. And Velvet's teams over eBid, and they do a great job of getting really the value of, sometimes it surprised me what we get for them. It really does. And I've been in the business a long time, but.
We didn't mean to say that on.
So what's that I was saying, you know, one man's drugs, another man's
Here's another
drugs?
man's treasure. Well, you guys have been phenomenal. We really do appreciate it. I wish I could ask you about every procurement type, but we don't have the time to do all of that. That's why I wanted to focus on cooperative because you use it the most. But in terms of the other programs, you guys have discussed them. But when you do get back, if there's anything else that you think, oh, she didn't ask me about sole source. Why don't we do this differently about sole source? Or she didn't ask me about ITB. You know, whatever it is, since you use it so much, we want to make the processes easier for you, for them. And so we can go home early and not be canceled for hours. So that's why I'm doing this. Thank you all so much. We appreciate your time, and we'll be getting back to all of you in terms of when we put all of this together.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, you timed that excellent.
I was.
He's trying to stay on schedule tonight. I got a
Last night,
crazy.
yeah, it was our first
Yeah.
night, so I think we asked a lot of questions. So. Thank you so much. Thanks for the work that
Thank
you do.
y'all.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's parking passes. You need them.
How did that get? Oh, they gave it back to me. Oh, okay.
Going around the room.
All right. Metro Parks. Metro Parks. You came by yourself?
Well, Director Odom,
Really?
she had a, well, I don't think she knew the team needed to be here, like general services team.
No,
so-
you don't need to. We need the person that can answer the question. So.
Well, I'm gonna do my best.
Well, thank you for being here. Like I said, thank you for being here after hours. It means so much to all of us. And so the same question that we've been asking everybody, basically, we wanted to have a good understanding of the process as you understand it. And then the second half of that question is that we want to talk about performance improvement. What are some of the things that you see that are hold up in your situation that you think we could have done better? So I'm going to start you off because what I look at for parks, as I was trying to determine what I'm going to do with parks, was contracts. And so this nice resolution that I found, RS 2024-175, came to council, when did it come to us? Came to council sometime there. When did RS 2024-175 came to us? It came to us in 2024.
This year, yeah.
Yes, it came to us. It came to us in 2024.
Good answer, Darby.
But when I was looking, this is where it gets very interesting. Is that the letter to the board, the park boards, was dated August 2023. There was an email attachment that talks about this grant. It's a grant because you guys get a lot of grant. Talks about it in your system in September 2023. The grant itself, according to the form that I'm looking at, runs from October 2023 to September 2024, but it did not make it to council until around February or March of 2024. What is the hold-up? Why did that take so long to get to us, in your opinion? And I'm sorry, I don't want to start with problem. What is the process first, and then the problems?
Okay, so our process is just like the same as any other metro department. When we are in need of a service, most of ours are probably for services for building a community center or procuring building a new park, or it could be or just sometimes it's services for our pools, chemicals, or different things of that nature. And so we still reach out. There are some things that we do have on contract that that we constantly use, and they're renewing contracts, and then there's some things that we need that would be new. So we work with the procurement team in good cooperation. We, I think under Ms. Lane's direction, we started having bi-weekly and monthly meetings with the team so that we could see what was in queue, and we could, if there was anything urgent, they would push it up the list. And so that has worked out great for us. We still have the monthly meetings now, and they're great. And then the team has even reached out, and we've had an update, a training update to make sure our staff is aware of the things that they should do and have the process that they should go in getting things in queue. And we do have a dedicated buyer now, and so that's working out great for us.
Awesome, thank you. So with the example that I gave, and I was looking at it too. Oh yes, ma'am.
So
Would you
with the
please
viewing-
introduce
yeah.
yourself?
Yeah, please.
Oh, I'm
We were so
sorry.
eager to have you talking. I know her. That's my fault.
Shanita White, Metro Parks, Assistant Director of Finance and Administration.
She wants to put your name down so she can say she said it, but we have the video. Thank you, Ms. White. So if the grant was awarded in 2023, July, October, according to the emails there. And then the park board was made aware that this grant is coming, we're awarded, and all of that. And it's not a small amount, it's $704,000. But that contract did not make it to us until January or February 2024, which was about 7 or 8 months. And so at that point, according to the date on that grant, it's supposed to start October. It's already started or supposed to start 4 months or 5 months before we get it. So again, please do know that this is not a question of he did it, I did it. There was a delay. What are some of the things that you've run into that would typically will cause that delay, and what are some of the things that we can do to move this a lot faster?
Okay, so this, like you said, did come to Parks Board in August, and it's the Child and Adult Care Food Grant, and it looks like it came. So typically they have to go through a reapproval process each year. And so once they get approved to apply for the grant, they have to go in and put in the application. And most of the time, because of the date of our Parks Board, there's sometimes a delay in getting it to grants, and then there's another delay to get it to which council meeting it's going to be on. So, and you said this one was... So we have to have a completed application before we can even submit it to grants for them to look at it. And so I can't speak 100%, but it probably was that the completed application wasn't pulled down from the grantor's website, and so we couldn't get the completed grant to grants coordination to review so that they could send it on to legal to review so that they could get it on the council agenda. That has nothing to do, I mean, that's not, I guess that's because legal wants it done this way. We have to have the completed application to put in the packet to go to grants coordination.
Do y'all have an assigned person that does that for parks?
That sends all the grants
Yeah.
to grants coordination, yes, but each division within the department, if they are applying for a grant, they're responsible for the management of their grant application. So about this one being recreation, they have a program manager in recreation that actually administers the grant.
So because this is a federal grant, I know it doesn't go to procurement. We learned that yesterday. But the question is, they've already, so the email that they sent was saying you can apply. And so that's when you start the process of applying. Is that what I'm understanding? And even though the grant starts October, so one of the things that we were talking about yesterday, and I want to make sure that I understand the difference, especially for us, so we can know that in this case, this is what we do, in this case, this is what we do. My understanding with one of the contract we're talking about yesterday is that the contract does not really start until after we approve it. And that's when it goes into effect. But this being a federal grant, that starts in October, they've already told you you're getting it. Are you allowed to be reimbursed retroactively, or do you just only get 9 months? How does that work? And I don't know if finance wants to, I see Ms. Lane here, I know it's not purchasing, so.
Well, we do contact the grantor to make sure that we can continue to get reimbursed for the after.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
So, okay, so you've already started spending what you think you're getting from the grant, or no?
So in this
one is
particular,
every year.
Okay.
and in this particular one, those grant funds, they allow us to use what we have already. So it's a reimbursement grant. So,
Okay.
and then if we have additional funds, like, because it crosses our fiscal year, it's kind of difficult to to see it. But if we get the funds and let's say it was for FY24 reimbursement, where we're in FY25 now, so we can still get the reimbursement. Like if it was for July of 20. Oh my God. If it was for June of 24, but we got the money, let's say August of fiscal year 25, we're allowed to keep that money and use it because even though we're in a different fiscal year, they're not. So we're still able to use the money.
Have you ever had any that you thought were reimbursement and you've already used them, and you've already used the money and then you get denied the grant?
No, because we have to send them the vouchers. We have to send proof back that they've spent the money to buy this amount of food or this amount, or we fed this many kids or whatever. They have to submit proof before they get the reimbursement back.
And in my other hat, I'm the grants manager, right? And so this is what I do. Did for many years in my day job. So I do know how these grants work, but I want us to talk about it on record so that at least as we're looking at things, so that what we're going to talk about, that is on record. My thing for pulling that is not so much, because they did give you the approval, and it's every year they get that. I see all of that. But I was wondering why it took us so long to get it. That was where my concern is that why did they take, especially if it's something we get every year. And we got the notice that we will be getting this, and there's an email in 2023. Why did it take that long to get to us? It's my concern, and that's where the process in Metro needs to be looked at to see what are we doing, where can we, expedite things. If something's going to be routine, what else can we do? Is it legal? Is it finance? So that's what I wanted to get out of the question, and I was hoping maybe if you knew the precise reason why, and you've been able to tell us that part of it could just be that the fact that you got that email and the Parks Board said it's okay, the application have not started, so the application started after this?
Yes, and I mean, and another example, I would say we have one that just passed Parks Board last month that we get approval to apply. So we get the approval to apply, and then we have to come, and then they have to actually go in and apply, and then pull down the application. So if we don't have the full application, it may take the staff a minute to get the full application before we can submit it to these.
Who gives you the approval to apply? And y'all
Parks Board.
Parks Board.
Parks Board.
And then, just to add, and even after we apply, we have to come back for the approval to accept
To accept the
award.
money. We did that yesterday.
Yeah.
And we find out sometimes that we get the approval to apply after it's already applied. So that's part of the conversation.
Yeah.
But that's very good. Thank you so much. So now, in terms of, that was just with the contract that I pulled. Now, generally speaking, with procurement, you said it works like everybody else has been talking about. So now, in your opinion, what are some of the performance improvement based on what Parks has done and how things has flown? Are there anything that you think, why are we not doing this differently, or what should we do better, or is everything just great at Parks?
Well, I think we've made great accomplishments. We had some hang-ups before, but I think now our processes are going pretty smoothly. I think our continued monthly meetings work. If we get in a situation where we need something and it's slow, we just reach out to our contacts, whether it's Dennis or Terry or any members of his team. So.
Did I tell you that you can act as if they're not here? I don't know if I made that clear in the beginning. Like they're not here. So say anything you want to say about Miss Lane is not even here. Say anything you want to about all
The
of
idea
them.
that departments are shy about sharing their feelings is not one that we have borne out in fact.
Look, I've worked with, especially Michelle and that forever. So, I mean, they know I would tell the truth so they know that I'm not.
We appreciate it. I think it's good also because, I don't want this to be a purchasing bashing meeting. I think that talking about things that work is also great too, because this is all being recorded, and so it was good to everybody that we've talked to yesterday and today have said that they have a good relationship with purchasing, and so some of these things is not even purchasing fault.
Yeah, 'cause
some of it is the law in the books.
Yeah,
some of it is staffing. Some of it is the archaic procedure and forms, and so that's why if you do get back, if you have nothing more to share with us, when you do get back, if you think of something that you're filling out the form, like, why are we filling out this form? This is taking us 10 minutes. Maybe we don't need to do this. So you think about something else. If you would let us know or let them know, because we are collaborating on this to make sure that we put in place things that make life easy for you, for all of us.
Right. I mean, not to say that we haven't had some hiccups with certain contracts and things, but I mean, we.
So what are those hiccups?
I mean, like they say, it could be a legal issue or something's not being reviewed. People issues with certain things in the contract. I mean, I think I would have to have one of our the ADs from the planning team or the maintenance team to be more specific, but but they've had a few issues with, I think that Joe had the issue with something with Old Hickory, didn't he? Yeah, so I mean, but that was.
So if you would do me a favor when you get back and you talk to your team and ask them what their thought is, and ask them, is there something that not problems, but solutions, right? I think that's what we want, that we thought about this and this. If you send it to us, we would incorporate it into, and you don't have to say who said it. I mean, we're not. But if you would let us know, I think that would be very helpful. We want this to be productive, right? We want it to be productive, right? We've got a lot of good data from since yesterday, so we appreciate you being here, and thank you for all the work that you do.
Did you say the director was out of town? I don't think I've met the parks director yet.
You haven't?
No, I don't think I've met her. Did you say she was out of town?
No, she's not out of town. She had a schedule conflict at the last minute. So
Okay.
She's cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
Thank you, ma'am.
thank you.
All righty. Oh, this is good. Library.
Good to see you.
Again, thank you for being here. What I did not want to do is, I know we had a set of people yesterday, and I asked them a set of questions. I know some people work it, so I want to switch things around so that I like the unexpected questions. so I can get honest answers. I don't want prepared answers. So for library, I did not look at anything. I did not prepare anything. But what I wanted to talk about was the situation where you were looking for a director and you decided to put it out. And you got a company that was supposed to help with the search. The company started working with you and the board, and then something happened where you were not happy with their recommendations, and you have to start all over again. I want to understand that breakdown, because at the time when I was having the conversation with individual members of the board, it was procurement, it was legal, it was, so this is what I want us to talk about, that specific issue if you can. And then we can then talk about your other procurement experiences, the process as you understand it. And then the last part is we really do want to ask for your opinion, whether it's the problem with that particular incident, which was a problem that we know happened, or any of the things that you think this is how we work at the library, and these are some of the recommendations that we have that we think that we all should be doing to help make this process better.
For the viewing office
Introduce yourself.
audience, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes. I'm Susan Dry. I am the Assistant Director for Administrative Services for Nashville Public Library. And this is Jessica Horn. She is our Procurement Officer and Contract Administrator. So, the director search. Well, first of all, it did take a while to get that contract in place. So the board wanted to hire a recruiting firm, and we let them know up front it's going to take a while to get in place. We've already been told by procurement it'll take at least 6 months for an RFP, and that's due to various reasons. You know, it's a long process. It ended up taking a little bit longer, but when
So was that one an RFP, not a
it was an
cooperative?
RFP, it was an RFP, yes.
Who decides on, and I'm asking as I go so that I can, who decided on, so because it was an RFP, was the decision made by procurement on the firm that you were going to go with?
No,
Okay.
it
good.
was not. Honestly, the people who served on the evaluation committee were not Metro employees. They did not know the Metro process. So I think you had somebody from the foundation, you did have a Metro employee on there, and then you had somebody from our board. And I think part of the issue was them not understanding the Metro process. Okay. We did do an RFP. The firm that was chosen, and y'all know the Metro process, when you're scoring, there's points. There's points per category, whatever those categories are. If there's not a lot of point differentiation between the companies, it usually comes down to cost. So in the end, this company was quite a bit lower than the second company. Because there wasn't enough point differentiation, we had to go with that company. It's not that they were a bad company, it's just that's who they went with. The other thing is, none of the companies that were recruiting firms probably understood the Metro process. So when you have a board that gets together that has to do HR-related issues, if that board it's a public meeting, so everything has to be done in public. And that firm, it threw them for a loop because they'd never had to do that. And when they talk about it was legal, well, legal was pointing out if you are coming together as a board, that's considered a board meeting, and it has to be public. And that had not been done before. So there was a lot of issues that went into that. As far as the board not, and I can't speak for the board, but as far as the board not liking the final folks, that company had to go with the people who applied. So, and they did whittle 30 down to 10, and then it got whittled down to the 4. I don't know as that was the company's fault. Now, if the board wasn't satisfied with the final 4, that's fine. They wanted to go in a different direction. I don't necessarily think that was the company's fault.
Okay, so that part of it would not even bring in here. So with that experience, and I know that yesterday we talked about another executive recruiting that went through this process. So based on that experience, and we're going to have people leaving, needing to replace director, what are your recommendations in that area, especially when we're using recruiting firms that don't know our procedures? I mean, that's a waste of money if they're not doing what we need them to do. So how do we make that better? Because we will be having people leaving. Should everything be HR? Or what did you all learn from that process?
Well, I believe the board at one point did discuss HR doing it, but they wanted a recruiting firm that was library specific, not just a general headhunter, not just a general recruiter. They wanted somebody with library experience, and that's what they got. I think if we do this again and we do another recruitment, that we put in the scope of work, this is the Metro process that you will have to follow, so it's not a surprise to the company. I think that's one thing that did not get done the last time.
I think that's reasonable. To be able to say this is what we want you to do, I think that's very reasonable.
And we are a department of the Metropolitan Government, and this is the process you have to follow for us to be able to do this. And as long as they know up front, then that's fine.
Alrighty, well, that was that one, because I really wanted to put that to bed. So now, generally speaking, since you're here, can you talk to us about your procurement process in general, how that flows? And then the second part of the question is, what are some of the things that you would like to see us do different?
Sure. Well, as Shanita said, and probably most of the departments do, we identify a good or service that we need. We look to see if there's already a contract in place. We take advantage of Metro-wide contracts. We now know that cooperatives are out there. We look for cooperatives. If, for some reason, there's not a contract out there, it's over our delegated authority and there's not a cooperative, then we will look at procuring that service through Metro Procurement, and that will either be an ITB, which is invitation to bid, or an RFP, which is request for service or request for quotes.
Alrighty, I like these short answers. You have some, I think because you're a library, you have a lot of sole source. Is that because of the nature of the library for some of the things that you get?
Some of the things that the library procures, only one source can provide it. You know, if it's a database, if it's a certain sort of book, if it's whatever. So we do have a lot of sole sources. However, I know that the procurement standard has changed, the contract language has changed. So even though there still may only be one company that can do it, it may have to go out on an RFP or an ITB, and they'll have to negotiate stuff with that because of the contract language.
So this year you've had 14 sole sources as of the time of this KPI that I'm looking at. And so that's a lot. That's one of the higher one. And so when you decide to do a sole source because you're familiar with them, because they're the only one doing it, do you run that by procurements? Do you all look into whether since then something else has come up? And I know you're very special. I know that. And so, but do you look for things that are not? I mean that in a very nice way. It's a library. How many publishing and the library data thing is out there? So I understand that. But I'm just saying for the sake of what we're trying to do here and making sure that we're always looking for options out there that will save us money, that will be better. One of the things that makes me, that I always think about sole sources is the fact that that's the only people, that's where we're going. And so the money, can we even ask them to cut it in half? Like, you know, but if we said that, will they go, then what do we do? So we had a good discussion yesterday, and I'm just interested in how you guys do it as well.
We are always looking to, and Jess does a really good job. If we have somebody, say from our acquisitions team, that this is a database they went out there, we've done a survey, and the public want access to this, and there's only one place to get this. we will make sure, are you sure? Are you sure there's no, have you done the research? And if you know librarians, they can
Yes, they
research anything. Usually when we're bringing a sole source, usually, there's only one place to get it. So we do try, and we go back and double check and make sure.
That's what I wanted to check.
And we have gone to procurement to say, they say it's a sole source, we think it's a sole source. If you find something else, let us know.
Alrighty, well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. So now, what are some of the things that we can do better? We already talked about that interview one, but generally speaking, how we do business in Metro.
I'm gonna let Jess talk to this because she is our contracts administrator. She works with procurement. I'll let her talk.
She has a long list.
I have a list. I do have a list. So I'll say this. I'm pretty forthcoming with my feedback with Metro Procurement all the time anyway. So like we have a great partnership together, I think. And we've already seen a lot of improvements while Dennis has been on board, and we're excited to continue working with that team. So some of the things that I've been thinking about that I'm just going to throw out there that might not even be related to the Metro Procurement team, but are just impact all departments at the procurement level still, would be to standardize training around the MISA process, which John Griffey spoke to you all about yesterday, particularly as it relates to non-contract purchases. So
Around the
Metro Information Security Agreement.
That, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what John was discussing with you all yesterday, and that's something that our department, like I believe that was implemented for some time before our department became aware of what our responsibility was within that piece as it relates to the MISAs that are non-contract purchases. And so I would say to standardize training for all Metro departments around the MISA and also around certificates of insurance, because Metro Procurement handles those certificates of insurance for the contracts, but for non-contracts, my understanding is that the departments also have a responsibility to ask for the liability coverages and have that information on file. And then another thing would be to standardize training around like the workflow with Metro Legal for department steered procurements. Meaning sometimes they're, like say it's a tech-related purchase for software or something like that, maybe there are terms that they want us to sign off on. We don't have that authority at the department level, and so we have to get that vetted by Metro Legal. And so I don't know if that's standardized throughout all the Metro departments to know maybe what needs to go to legal, because it's great when we're partnered with Metro Procurement and it's a contract and they're helping us get it to the right desks or the right ears and getting the right signatures, but it would be really cool to have more information or standardize some of that for all departments across the board.
Well, and especially if we're going to eventually do more delegated authority. Those are the procurements that we're having to do, and we're having to funnel this through.
Yes, and so I would say we support increased staffing for Metro Procurement. I don't believe 8 buyers is enough for the current level of purchasing volume, even as fantastic as they are. So
I didn't tell you to say that.
No. But because that's just, they each have so much on their plate, and we have over 50 Metro departments. We all have very different needs, although there are some centralized needs, like even through General Services who you just met with, but sometimes we need to go out for a different contract, and there's only so many hours in a day. So we support that. John Griffey brought up a great suggestion that I'll echo. He was talking about an improved tracker or just a tracker for monitoring the project status. Metro Procurement has a data sheet, which it's useful. It's kind of set up like a spreadsheet. There's a lot of data out there. If there was a way to simplify that, or to know like this is with legal right now, or who has the ball in their court. Like I've submitted some cooperatives. I know they're approved. I know they're routing, but I just don't know if we're waiting for it to get on the legislation agenda. I don't know if legal's still reviewing it. I'm not sure if it's close to getting on the council agenda. So it's hard sometimes at the department level to know where my request is at in the process. And then I would also maybe say improve centralized contract management. So we had a meeting last week with a Metro vendor who is on contract, and it was sort of a vendor conflict resolution meeting where we were addressing some performance issues. And that contract was initially steered by another Metro department. It was steered by General Services. And so I reached out to General Services to ask, hey, are you having any issues with this vendor? We're having some quality, service issues. Things aren't up to standard. They're not experiencing any issues, but we are. And so we went ahead and we scheduled that meeting. But as Zach explained yesterday, I believe there's not a centralized contract management, and we might be experiencing different levels of performance with the same vendors and trying to understand the root cause of that. Is that just because this is a bigger Metro department, so they get a more experienced technician than a smaller Metro department? We don't know what the cause of some of that is, so maybe centralizing that a little bit would be better. And then I think the last thing I have here, it would be improved consistency around Metro buyer training, which is already happening. And we're excited to be partnered now with a dedicated Metro buyer to the library. I don't know what that looks like down the road, if buyers will be cross-trained or when buyers rotate to different departments, maybe what that looks like. But yeah, overall, as I said, we're really excited about where things are and where they're trending. And so, yeah, that's what I had.
I loved your feedback. I think it's the best feedback that we've gotten so far. I believe you were honest about the feedback of what needs to be done, and I really liked her feedback. I think she was very detailed in it. And, yeah.
And part of it is also repeating some of what we heard yesterday. So which is also good because it brought it home that if you're saying it, somebody else said it, then it means that it's across board. The tracking is something that
everybody's
talk
mentioned
about a lot. And I wonder whether the way we do our approvals now, I guess that is, it's paper-based. So we take the paper from one department to the other. Is that how we approve stuff?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
We have an entirely electronic procurement system. We're one of the few governments.
So then why is it difficult to track where it is?
I don't think that it is super difficult. It was much more difficult when I came to purchasing and when Michelle became purchasing agent not many years ago, but some years ago. There was no centralized tracking system. When Michelle became purchasing agent, we worked with ITS, as I mentioned to John yesterday, to build a SharePoint site. And when we have a SharePoint site where we track all of the information. Now, there are restrictions on who can access that site because by state and local law, we are in a cone of silence when we are procuring things because you don't want the potential vendor pool to know what's going on. So some of the information is limited. I will be the first to admit that we have some trouble updating it sometimes because we do have buyers who are severely overtaxed in terms of their workloads. But we do have a centralized system where you could go, if we have a requisition, and you can go and you can see where it is in the process. We have had a conversation even today about slimming that down to make the data that's publicly available easier to read because there is a lot of data in it. But we do have, if you were to look now as opposed to 4 years ago, I mean, we do have a centralized tracking system, and it's all done.
And if you are working with the buyer, let's say department does not have access to that system, then they should be able to call the buyer that they're working with and to be able to get where it is in the system. But all the buyers should have access to that tracking system.
We would just ask them to sign a confidentiality. Basically, the only restriction to accessing it, anybody can have access to it, is you have to sign a confidentiality agreement so that we can discuss with you and train you on what you can share and what you can't share.
Well, I'm not even sure they even want the data that you're wanting to share. They just want to know. I think the thing is they just want to know where it is in the process.
Sure.
So it doesn't even have to be a data share tracking system. It just to be able to say if it's legal, she knows it's in legal and who it's with. So if she wants to pick up the phone or email whoever, if she's already working on that RFP, she ought to know that relationship anyway.
We agree, and that's the point I was making just a minute ago. Is that we've had a conversation today about clearly the message we've heard is the need to scale that down to where it's a more accessible for the members. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah, and one comment from me. So my dream, again, I think the strategy we have is to improve communication and collaboration. If we've got improved staffing, my dream is for you all to meet weekly and go through every project and to where at any given point in time, what you know is only a week old, right? That's my dream. We have some buyers that may have 12 departments they're dealing with.
Well, that's another question I was going to ask you.
And so So that's the vision, and we do have some engagement. I think your buyer, I think you've probably seen more from your buyer now that we have a dedicated buyer and the communication. But please understand that buyer has multiple departments that they're trying to do that same activity with. So it's, honestly speaking, staffing-wise, it's a very difficult time right now.
So you have 6 buyers for 50 departments, right? Is
We
that
have
eight?
8 buyers for 55 departments and agencies, and currently, the buyers, in the last quarter, we processed 403 active procurement events. That's RFPs, ITBs, amendments, cooperative requests, sole source requests, emergency requests, any kind of request that you can imagine. We have an average of 20 active procurements per buyer right now, which is 7 above what the industry standard is for a sustainable workload.
Yeah, you knew exactly what I wanted to know.
I have a whole dashboard I can send you to.
Please send me that dashboard.
We'll get to where they will get to.
God, you knew what I
They're
was
gonna be on
ask.
the hot seats after we talk to the department. So we will get to. But I wanted to get the issues. Part of the reason why I wanted to talk to the department first before procurement, because Dennis has a strategic plan that he shared with me, and I can tell you that some of the things we're talking about are already addressed. I saw it, but I did not want us to talk about this plan, and then you all come behind him and you give us issues that are not addressed in the plan. So that was why I want us to talk about what you have, and then when we do talk to him, we'll see what's already addressed, and if it's not addressed, then we'll go to what's our plan to address that. So that's the whole purpose of this, and I think that, thank you all for being forthright. Like I said, the goal is to make all of our lives easier, and I think that's where we're headed. So like I told the other department, if you get back to your office and you think about something, and you may just shoot out an email and said, I just thought about this one, what about that one, and we'll be more than happy to consider it. So we appreciate your time.
Sure, thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, the other MACC. We had Mark yesterday, so we kept getting confused with Mark and Mark and Mark. How you all doing?
Good to see you again.
How are you?
Hi. If you will, please introduce yourselves.
I am Ashley Harrington. I'm the director of MAC.
I'm Jim Diamond. I'm the finance director of the health department.
And my name is John Finke. I'm the Bureau Director for Environmental Health Services.
Awesome. Thank you all for making the time to come. I know that you were out there. Just to reiterate, this is just information gathering session. The goal of this work group is to look at how we do business in Metro, and also to look at some of the issues that you all may have had, and more importantly, the recommendations that you have for us in terms of what you think we should be doing differently. For the first set of people that we interviewed, I had specific questions for them, an RFP and things that we were looking at. In your case, because I knew we had an issue on the table with the van procurement, I figured that would be the biggest thing that we need to talk about. Sure. How did we get here? What were the problem with that? How far are we with that? And based on this experience that you've had, and interestingly, when I was looking at the KPI, you're not even on my list, so I couldn't look at something to put in there. But based on that experience, the last question will be, what would you have done differently? What should we have done differently? What should procurement do differently? And so with that, I would, and let me say, let me apologize before. I have to be somewhere by 3:40. Down the street, so
3:40, you mean?
6:40.
Oh, well, it's
You're late.
3:40 somewhere. So by around 6:40. So if I get up in the middle of it to step out, my able colleagues here will wrap it up for me, and they've been more involved in this case than I am. So I figure they're the experts anyway. So with that, I'll throw it to you guys.
Can I start a little bit? Sure. So I think the majority of the issue we were having, it wasn't necessarily an issue with our finance team or procurement. It was an issue with the vendor and their contract. they breached the contract essentially. So the cost of steel doubled, or I mean, it increased to some degree. I think they said doubled, but I'm not positive on the number. And that put them outside of the escalation that was built into that contract. With that, rightfully so, our finance team brought it to the attention of their team, and we dealt with the contract. They're in the middle of trying to go through line by line to see if this current vendor is allowed to fulfill the 2 vans that we had in line for them. If they do not, we are also researching new vendors to take their place. We don't mind to do business with this particular vendor again if a contract can be if it can be satisfactory to us and their needs, with maybe a little more escalation built in, just because there is, because the cost of steel will likely go up again. I mean, that's how goods and services work in that sense. So that's kind of being worked through. What anybody could have done better, I'll leave to you, because that's very much not my area.
Sure, no, and I agree. I think everyone did everything on the Metro side as best we could. It's just a general delay in getting vehicles on the road for MAC. There's such a demand that the vehicles take a beating, on the road every day, traveling all over the county. So, and it's a multi-step process of actually getting the van and getting the insert and getting it wrapped and ready. So it's just a slow process. We understand it takes a while, and there may not always be funding available. So we don't have any issues with procurement itself. It's just the time period it takes, and things happen with vehicles mechanically, or we even had a rock thrown at one of your officers that broke a window. So like that takes vehicles out. So to have 3 vans sitting in our parking lot at Lynn's not able to be put out on the street, it's frustrating. We're not looking to blame anybody, but just if there's any way. Now there is an RFP out there currently for the inserts. So hopefully that is our hope that does get done, but we're it's just frustrating to park our cars and walk by those vans and
so
see that it's
my understanding was that this particular vendor was through a sole source for this particular van. So who makes the determination that this was the right person to go to? And the reason why I wanted to ask that question is when it comes to sole sourcing, we've always talked about how do we determine, and so I want to know the process where it was decided that this is the right person to go with. Again, not looking for blame, but to be able to see, is there a way as department that's coming up with sole sources, vendors, for us to check that before we get to a place like this? That is the point of the question.
Sure, and I can't speak to them being the sole source previously, but it is out on the street now, so we didn't submit any sole source paperwork, I believe.
Yeah, but she's probably talking about where y'all bought the vehicle.
When you bought the vehicle.
Y'all bought them from Murfreesboro. I can't remember which one it is down there because I called and we talked to them. And I'll be honest with you, as far as the dealership, they were very hard. The fleet department was very hard to get on the phone for me. But that's what she's talking about when you bought the vehicle. The mats are not a sole source. It's out for RFP.
The vehicle itself.
The health department does not purchase the vans. We go through fleet. So
Which would have been
General service.
Stacy.
General service. So
Yeah.
This is an upfit. The upfit is different than the upfit company is out of Indiana.
It could have been, okay, just so you know.
Because we were talking about the Mack vehicle yesterday.
Yes.
And my understanding, if I remember correctly, was that the Mack vehicle was a different procurement type, but this Mack vehicle was a sole source. Am I misunderstanding that from yesterday?
The vehicle is not the vehicle was purchased, my understanding, the vehicle was purchased through fleet. It is the upfit that the conversation that we're having about is the issue is not the getting of the vehicle, the issue is the getting of the upfit. Which is the
all the stuff that goes in there. So where does the sole source come in?
The sole source was for Mavron, which was, what's the public record? The sole source was from Avron for the upfit.
For the upfit.
I'm not. I mean, it is out for a competitive bid now.
Okay. And so it came up yesterday, and I just wanted to understand that if a department decided they want to do a sole source, how did they come up to, we're going to go with this person, so that we're looking at that process so we don't come back later and then it's not a good, does it make sense? That's what I'm.
Sure.
This is part of what we're looking at procedures to be able to say that should department be the only determinant, should somebody else be, that's what I'm trying to get with that conversation.
Sure. Within our delegated authority, we have up to 25,000, but anything like vehicle inserts or anything like that, we have to fill out a sole source form and submit that to procurement. And procurement is the arbiter of whether or not something's a sole source. So it's not just health saying, Mevron's the only game in town, let's cut a PO. We work through procurement and hopefully get contracts in place, and they're the ones that determine whether or not they see something as a sole source.
When y'all bid these vehicles, did y'all bid them through the dealership with the upfit on there?
These
No.
are separate transactions completely.
It was two different transactions.
It's we buy the van, or Metro buys the van through General Services fleet, and then it gets delivered to us or delivered directly to
You can do it
the
either way.
insert company. But there's no way we can buy a street-ready animal control van through one procurement, one vendor. There's no, that we know, no such.
Well, they can do the upfit. The dealership can do the upfit. They bid the upfit out. I used to be in the automotive industry. I've done fleet all my life. They can bid that for y'all. They can go out there if it's something they can get through a vendor, and they can actually do that upfit on those vehicles to where when they pull off that lot, they are ready to go.
I think it would
Not under
depend.
our contracts. They probably, in health defense, they probably could not, because our contracts don't cover that. And so we would have to amend those contracts to cover
We
that.
could amend them, because it's a lot easier process when you do it the
When
other
you pay
way.
the other way. And you only dealing with one vendor that is going to
instead of-
now give you a van that has everything that you want in it.
I think it would also depend on the kenneling system that they would be able to provide, because we are pretty specific in what we need. Not to the point where it has to necessarily be a sole source, but they have to be steel, they have to be able to be closed and locked with a carabiner for officer safety, because not every
Yeah.
animal that we impound is friendly. We can't just put them in the plastic airline crate and
Crate and
put
go
that
with
to the
it.
side, right? So they have to be fairly specific, but there is some leeway in what vendor or if it has to be a sole source.
Alrighty, there is a follow-up that I'll have on this with purchasing when we start having that conversation, because I hear something different, and maybe I'm hearing it differently. But that's on me, we'll get to that later. I'll leave it to the two of you if you have any other question, but generally speaking, as one of the smaller departments, you don't have a whole lot of transactional issues with procurement, but when you do, how does that work? What process does that take?
Are you talking about?
Oh, and you are Department of Health, so
Yes.
yeah, just talk
Oh,
about
yeah.
health generally, not just MACC.
Yeah, and when you say dealing with procurement, just
Yeah.
routine stuff?
So
or if
routine
there's
stuff,
an-
whether it's, so basically what we've done is, and for health, we did not, what do I
They
have
have a
for
lot of
health?
sole sources.
So for health, you have a lot of sole sources, you have, it's a lot of sole sources.
Yes.
So what does that process look like from your end? How does that start? How does it, can you walk us through it?
Again, we identify whatever needs we have, goods, services, and then try to do some research on our own to see if there's any, multiple areas that can provide it, or if we feel it is a sole source. And then, we'll fill out the sole source form and send it through purchasing to get their take on it. And they would either approve it or say, no, there's apparently other vendors that handle this type of thing. So we do work through our delegated authority, and so everything over 25,000 we would submit down to procurement. And even under, if there was any question with regard to a sole source, we would seek their expertise.
And a lot of their sole sources are dealing with brand name edification.
Yeah, and
I think so too.
I can answer to that a little bit too. As being over environmental health, air pollution is one of the programs that I have. And we have a very specific monitoring network throughout Davidson County. The air monitors that are approved by EPA, there's only 2 or 3 companies in the country that are approved by EPA. If we have a monitor by one of those companies, our employees train on it. The spare parts and replacement parts are the same across all of their monitors. So we request a lot of stuff sole source, because if we just went to the lowest bidder and got all different types of monitors, it'd be a training nightmare for our staff. The amount of maintenance equipment and replacement supplies we would need to have on hand would be, it'd be too much for us to handle. We also are required to create technical documents for every monitor that we have as to how the piece of equipment works, and those are very extensive. They take us about 6 months to write, and if we had to do one for every type of new equipment that came in, because of a lowest bidder or something like that, we couldn't keep up. So you do see a lot of sole source, especially out of environmental.
I didn't even think about environmental, under health, but yeah, you get that now. So as far as the procurement process, what do y'all think we could do to make it better process for y'all?
Sometimes I wonder if procurement has enough staff, and I feel.
Okay, y'all paid him.
I don't. No, however long we've worked together, I know Dr. Wright had these conversations back when he was director. So it's, I know how much business we throw at procurement, and we are theoretically one of the smaller departments. And so I can't even, imagine general services for all the buildings that they have to serve, and police and fire. So the staff has been wonderful to us for years. I know I can, pick up the phone or email any of them and get responses back. But and again, doing things within our delegated authority, I know how hard it is to get bids back from vendors and to get proper quotes to make sure we're doing everything properly. So. I think they're under-resourced. In just my opinion, I haven't done a deep dive into it, but I know they're handling a lot of procurements at once for each buyer, and I know they're kind of shifting to a model where one buyer is assigned to a department, and that may help. But I just, again, unscientific. I feel like they're under-resourced.
I think even from my perspective, and I don't deal with them on the level Jim does, he's in finance, I'm over animal control, and I agree. I think they need some staff. I will also take some, just for you. But
Let's get your van first.
Yeah.
But, I do think that they need their staff looked at, and, some increase there, so.
Do you all have an assigned buyer?
Yes. There's one person in my area in finance that handles most of the purchasing activities. So, and again, it takes our people a while to get educated and learn the processes. So I know they have a tremendous amount of responsibility and a big learning curve, as far as all they deal with. But it's yeah.
Because I know in my conversations with health have been, where there had been some discussion of like, did health need to have its own procurement buyer specific for health? And I think because of sometimes, in council, the contract conversation will come up, like what, like the documents say this and we're getting the legislation and I will say the default is usually legal procurement. There's like usually a handful of departments that are kind of put on the blame side of things. And so I don't know if there's been any more discussion about that. That was, or if you'd heard anything, like that's an interest of, interim director Kai, or if that's was just like offhanded, like, I wish we had our own buyer, that we controlled, basically.
Pardon me. I know that was one of Dr. Wright's things, and again, working within the delegated authority, I'm not sure how much improvement that would have for us.
I see. Okay.
Timeline-wise. So, like I said, Catherine Correa, who works for me, is amazing and handles most of the purchasing on the health side. So I'm not sure that would
Be a solution.
Be a solution for health, and I may get yelled at tomorrow for saying that. But, that's just a feeling I have.
Right.
I think we have our stuff organized and as much information as possible, but anything over 25,000 we send to them, and obviously those are usually the more complex things anyway. So.
Okay.
What we see as I'm going to say an optimal process is when the department has I call it a sourcing coordinator, which is what you're referring to, and then we have one buyer who works with that sourcing coordinator. And so that's sort of the model we're working toward. Now, we do have some departments that don't have a sourcing coordinator that's in place yet. Using General Services, Ava is actually probably one of the best that we have in working with. I mean, she knows every project, and so it makes it streamline the collaboration and communication. So I think that's the model that, from a procurement perspective, I'd like to see us go to once we're fully staffed.
And I missed some of the meetings, so I don't necessarily know all the details about that. But so that's just one person that really is kind of like the lead who understands like every potential thing that's going to need to be bought and can be kind of the conduit for explaining and providing insight to the buyer.
Correct. And then we will link our buyer directly to that person. Mm-hmm. And so going back to the tracking, which a lot of the departments have talked to, these two people will know all.
Yeah.
So at any given point in time. So it just streamlines everything. Actually sort of aids in the systematic process that we're looking to improve as well. So.
And Catherine does a very good job. I just want to point out that you do have that, and Catherine is very effective at that, and health is a very good process for it.
And a lot of what we do in finance at health is education, because we have program people that, well, I need this piece of software, I need this piece of equipment, I need this, I need that. Can you get it to me tomorrow? No, we can't. Mm-hmm. Here's why. So we have to work to educate on the processes, so they don't super care about what we have to do in bids and all that. But they're like, well, I need this, I want this. So we try to be as consistent and as open and as educational as we can with our staff, and I think they generally get it and eventually do. But we again just try to be the best stewards of the finances entrusted to us and getting doing things the right way. So sometimes that takes a little longer than people would like, but. That's the way we do it.
Well, that's what we're trying to do, streamline it to where we save everybody time and it becomes more efficient. And we got to get them some staff. We do know that. If we've learned anything, they need staff. Anything else?
I don't really have any other questions.
We appreciate y'all's time.
Of course.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Discuss next meeting.
Can I take that off?
Do I feel validated?
I need to hit this stop meeting.
Oh wait, don't stop
Okay.
it yet. We're not totally done. Well, what's the flavor on the next meeting? What did y'all talk about? Anything yesterday, or like what's on our agenda? Is the agenda to come back and then hear about procurement again? The vision for the future.
That's what I've gathered from what Chair's been saying. is
Okay.
that after
I think we need
the
to have
discussion
a
with
better
departments.
meeting with them, get where they need to go in their direction. And
Is that something that the chair is trying to do before the holidays?
My recommendation would be that we leave here with the idea that I will talk with Chair and try to get some dates scheduled between Chair, the committee members or the working group members, and with purchasing on a day that meets everybody's schedule, because I think it's probably important for more people to be at the next meeting to kind of group up, and then we'll include the videos with the meeting notice.
Okay.
To committee members.
All right, that sounds good. So we discuss next meeting. All right.
Are we good to go?
Go for it. You want to say
Thank
we're
y'all for
adjourned?
attending. Have a good night. We're adjourned.